Much of the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, is about counting people and designating certain people for certain roles. We see that in our Torah portion this week. Parshat Naso begins with enumerating the responsibilities of different clans within the tribe of Levi. Aaron's male descendants were the Kohanim, the priests. Only Kohanim could enter the innermost parts of the temple and eat from certain sacrificial offerings, while other Levites were caretakers, guards, cleaners, and musicians at the portable tabernacle and later at the temple. When it was time to move the tabernacle, the Levites were in charge of schlepping everything. So we read that the Kohathites are to carry the most sacred objects, the Ark of the Covenant, the bread of display, the lampstand. The Gershonites carry the fabric elements of the Mishkan, the coverings, screens, wall hangings, and the Merarites carry wooden elements, so the planks, bars, posts, sockets, and cords. As a Reformed Jew, I instinctually bristle at the notion of birthright status, but I am fascinated by the specificity with which Torah catalogs responsibility and the respect that ancient Israel must have had for these different realms of expertise. Perhaps because we are less than 5 months out from a presidential election, expertise has been on my mind. Given that God no longer appoints who's in charge of what, we need to figure out the question of leadership by ourselves. What makes someone equipped to serve our cities, states, and country? In the Talmudic and post-Talmudic period, Jewish communities had a system in which the Bnei Ha'ir, the townspeople, or the Berurim, elected selectmen, mostly ruled. However, the townspeople's authority was balanced by the Adam Hashuv, the respected expert, literally an important or prominent person, traditionally a leading scholar. And it is worth noting that the townspeople's selectmen and expert all derive their authority from the Kahal, the community, and not from God. So this is a departure from the prophets and kings of earlier Jewish tradition. The Talmud first introduces the Adam Hashuv in a story about an argument between two butchers. The butchers, who were competitors, had a deal that they would work on alternate days. But after a while, they had a disagreement. Somebody violated the agreement. The butchers came before Rava for judgment, and Rava made a ruling that one of the butchers was to be fined. And a townsperson raised an objection. He said, "Don't the townspeople have jurisdiction over matters involving fines for violating local ordinances? What is Rava doing judging on this matter?" At another stage, Rav Papa steps in. He explains that the townspeople only have jurisdiction if there is no Adam Hashuv in the town. If a town has an Adam Hashuv, then the townspeople must defer to his expertise. And in this case, Rav Papa says, Rava is such an Adam Hashuv. Therefore, it is appropriate for Rava to rule on this matter between the butchers instead of the townspeople. And the notion of the Adam Hashuv becomes central to Jewish legal thinking about the limits on communal authority. The townspeople represent majority will, while the Adam Hashuv represents expert knowledge and a check on the townspeople's power. And that the Talmud never defines an Adam Hashuv strikes me as a feature rather than an absence. It leaves us with a sense that an Adam Hashuv is someone whose expertise the community as a whole trusts, not formally elected in the way of today's modern democratic elections, but a credible, trusted person. A community gives tacit consent to have disputes adjudicated by this expert. The people's deference is ultimately what gives the Adam Hashuv authority. And that means that Jewish legal tradition takes as its premise a mostly rational, mostly compliant public, a public that trusts experts. The acceptance of the Adam Hashuv is evidence that Jewish legal tradition does not share the contemporary American public's distrust of experts. Because, unfortunately, the public of the rabbinic imagination is not the public of the United States today. We are in a crisis of anti-intellectualism and plummeting trust in institutions, be it in public health, education, the government, and more. For example, it seems that for many Americans, a political candidate's inexperience, which is often but not always coupled with youth, is a mark of integrity rather than a red flag about the ability to lead. There's an absurdity to how not being into politics has become a mark of political credibility. There is a general distrust of government and those who participate in it. To state the obvious, to defer to experts means admitting that someone knows more than we do. For modernists, committed as we are to individual rights and democratization of knowledge, the notion that an elite few hold authority that others lack can feel like turning against core values. But this egalitarian impulse is leading our country to a dangerous place. So how can we get Americans to understand that trusting experienced civil servants isn't relinquishing control to a self-serving elite, but rather a freely given rational choice? How do we get America to be less cynical and more trusting? How do we make our citizenry more like the public of the rabbinic legal imagination? You will be unsurprised that revitalizing liberal religion is part of my response. The Pew Research Center finds that religious people tend to be more trusting of institutions and of people. And it's hard to parse out whether this is causal or correlative. But Robert Putnam makes an argument that these skills and connections gained through participating in organized religion inspire and equip a person to participate in civic organizations more broadly. Putnam writes, "Churches provide an important incubator for civic skills, civic norms, community interests, and civic recruitment. Religiously active men and women learn to give speeches, run meetings, manage disagreements, and bear administrative responsibility. They also befriend others who are in turn likely to recruit them into other forms of community activity. In part for these reasons, churchgoers are substantially more likely to be involved in secular organizations, to vote and participate politically in other ways, and have deeper informal social connections." Though Putnam does not go so far as to say that religious engagement begets civic engagement, he does offer that religious engagement can encourage and support civic engagement. In 18th century Germany, Moses Mendelssohn made the same case even more explicitly. He wrote that Judaism makes for better citizens. He believed that religion, done correctly, is a system that teaches people to care for the common good. In order to be an upright citizen, Mendelssohn writes, a person must understand that he has to renounce some of his rights only for the common good, that he has to sacrifice some of his own advantage only for the sake of benevolence. And he argues that Judaism inculcates that sensibility. Ideally, Mendelssohn says, people are internally motivated to be good citizens, and the state does not force nor provoke fear. Religion can cultivate that necessary inner motivation. As Mendelssohn puts it, Judaism teaches us that duties toward man are also duties toward God. And as Putnam articulates and Pew data corroborates, practicing religion means that we are more likely to step up in our duties toward God and toward man, to volunteer, vote thoughtfully, respect the rule of law, and take care of one another, to trust one another. I believe that it is possible for our country to restore trust, to rebuild confidence in institutions, to recapture a fading sense of commonality among co-citizens, a shared purpose across ideological lines. I believe this because I believe in my country. I recognize its serious failings, but I still have faith in America's potential and promise. Visible even before you step into our home are two symbols of my family's identity: an American flag on our porch post and a mezuzah on our doorpost. My patriotism informs my Judaism, and my Judaism informs my patriotism. My vision for America is a society a little more like Jewish communities of old, one in which we balance the power of the B'nai Ha'ir and the Adam Hashuv, a society that is able to respect the authority both of the townspeople and of the expert, a citizenry able to put aside ego for the common good, a nation committed not only to the betterment of our families, but to the betterment of our country. Shabbat Shalom.